even before it was a district provided resource. Many of our high schools were using the resource at that time, specifically to support like SAT, ACT, and so on. In about 2014, 2015, we moved forward with the purchase of Sadlier Vocabulary as a supplemental resource for all students in all schools. So if you've been around for a minute, you might remember that in 2014, we piloted resources for core. We couldn't find much of anything we liked then. But in high school, they were like, you know what, we really do like this resource quite a bit. So we, as a district, really, I mean, kind of the writing was on the wall in the spring of last year that the learning loss issues were pretty significant. And even outside of the pandemic, we had noticed a shift in our data that really indicated that our kids were struggling with reading for different reasons. So it's one thing to struggle with reading when you're looking just at like the passage or a paragraph. It's a completely different concern, or I guess an additional concern, when kids are struggling with reading at the word level, when the words are literally in the way of their comprehension. So the pandemic, like I said, exacerbated that. You all know that last year, whether our kids were in person or whether they were at home, they were far more quiet than we would ever want them to be. And that is really important when it comes to reading, because one of the fastest ways to acquire vocabulary is to take it in, to actually hear it and then to speak it. And we did not get as much of that this year. So we were puzzling through all of these pieces, and we had the opportunity to extend the high school adoption into middle school. And it happened really quickly. So I've never in my lifetime in Gwinnett seen anything happen this fast, where it occurred at the November board meeting. It was approved. And I think it showed up on your portal like by that Monday or Tuesday. It was like, boom, suddenly it is there. So this is a resource. You know, I told the high school group, it isn't like the glitziest or the flashiest. I use the term the sexiest. It's not that kind of resource. It is tried and true and research based. And when I share the recording with you all, I am going to find a key places in the high school recording for you all to listen to, because you'll get some perspective from teachers who've used it for quite some time. And what we know about this resource is that it really is good for all kids. It helps English language learners. It helps students with disabilities. It helps gifted students. Like it really is a great resource for all. The other thing too, I wanted to just make you all aware of is that you've noticed if you go to the lock, the front page, how do I fit it all in? We added this year we've called out that 20 minutes of explicit vocabulary instruction every week. You know, I referenced with the high school group this notion of drift. We have always known that kids need explicit vocabulary work, but we haven't at the district office really called attention to that. So therefore, it hasn't really been happening. And we've noticed that our kids are struggling not only with vocabulary and context, but they don't know how to build words based on what they know about other words. So for that reason, we feel like this is an important resource. All teachers in the district are going to be invited to a training on January 5th, that day that we return. And well, you all return. I'll be back 2 days before that. But you all will not have to provide the training for that. You'll just kind of be there as a support. But our hope is that you all will be kind of like the pioneers in your building who get in there, experiment with it, learn about it, and can really sort of be the champion for it in your schools. So I do appreciate you all stepping up. We learned from the rollout of HMH that it is just not effective to relegate all the training to someone else. So Jane and Ellen are phenomenal, but they're not in the district with us every day. So in order to really get teachers behind this, it's got to come from inside the district. And really, it's got to come from our teachers, even more so than from us. So we are really excited to have this opportunity. And we knew it was coming, but we also know that we were in a resource desert for like nearly 20 years. We had no new resources in middle school language arts for nearly 20 years. And now all of a sudden we've got HMH, we've got Amplify Reading as a strategic support. And now we're introducing this. So we wanted to kind of take our time with it. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Jane Sharp and Ellen Edmonds, and we're going to kick off with the training. What I'm going to encourage you to do is as questions come up, make a note of them. But we learned from the high school group that it probably is best to do all the questions kind of at the end, and they will carve time for that. And so with that, we're going to get started. I just saw Carla said 31 years in middle school for her. Girl, I had 29 in middle school. And yes, you have been called to do that work. So, all right, ladies, you ready?
Yes. We're so excited to be here with you and throughout your years of using Vocabulary Workshop Achieve. And I'm just so excited for you. And you have Kimberly and Kim and David to work with. And we have a great relationship with all three of them. And Kimberly has such a knowledge of and passion about what she wants you to acquire using Vocabulary Workshop Achieve. And we're here to make sure that that happens. And that happens readily. And we want you to know that we're here if you need us, even one-on-one or as a group, even after this training or ongoing. And you are the leaders for the other teachers. So you may need to contact us during the days or your days at school or whatever, but please feel free to do that because we're here for you. Wish we could be with you every day. We have Ellen Edmonds, who is our VP of Learning, and she knows everything about everything, and she's going to train us today and ongoing. So thank you so much.
All right. So I want to be really cognizant of our time together. You really heard from Kimberly why you are here today. I want to be clear about a few things. One, I'm not going to talk much about the why of vocabulary instruction today or about best practices in using the program. Sometimes I can't help but mention a few of those things, but my intent for today is to really make sure you understand the basic functionality of Sadlier Connect. And the reason that we're doing that is that when we begin the professional learning in January for teachers, we know that some teachers are going to quickly catch on and be able to implement, and others are later adopters and may need some support. They may find some challenges that day of professional learning. And if they know that there's someone locally, in their school that they can call upon for assistance, that will make a huge difference. Because it's going to be done virtually, I'm not going to see body language, or my colleague who might be doing this is not going to see body language. We're not going to be aware that someone is frustrated because they can't figure out how to log in or don't see the assign icon. And so knowing that we have you there as someone that we can point them to begin the problem resolution. And that doesn't mean that you have to be the only expert. We are a partnership team, but you can do frontline support and then ask us to step in where it's necessary, and that will be a huge help. And I don't expect that you're going to leave today as an expert on the functionality, but I think that if you look at the functionality today and then join us again in January, you'll feel fairly confident that you can model the basic elements of this. And then the other thing that I want to say is that this is not a perfect system, but we really view ourselves as partners with the teachers that we work with. And so as you identify areas that you think might be improved by change in functionality, I can't promise you that that will happen this month or that it will happen even in this school year. But if you let us know about it, we can begin to put it into our plan for improvements and budget for it and get it on the timeline. And we really are committed to listening to teachers and to making improvements that teachers think are critical. So don't suffer in silence. And don't let your teachers suffer in silence. We want to really hear what you have to say. So I'm not saying dump that all on us today. You can send it in an email. You could ask for a quick opportunity to spend some time with us and let us hear that feedback. But if you have questions about the functionality today as we go along, please make sure you ask about that. And I think these are the basic things we're going to cover. Your colleague, Charlie, was kind enough to send a couple of screens so that we can make sure that you understand how you're going to log in. And he or Kimberly certainly can give you more explicit guidance. But when you go into your Gwinnett system, you're going to be choosing third-party vendor, and you're going to be selecting the grade level and the resource category that you would need to access, and then be given a set of icons that fit into that category, and click on the link for vocabulary workshop, and you will be taken directly to what I consider the table of contents. Now, I know I didn't describe that in the smoothest way, but if you have questions about how you access the resource, we've got some local experts who can help you get there. What I'm going to do now is move from those couple of screens and go directly into what I believe is the first screen you see, which is your particular grade level resource and what I consider the table of contents, which is down the left-hand side of the screen. There is a scroll bar that you would need to access to be able to touch all of those resources. And when you click on an entry or node, you'll see the resources that are relevant for that entry or node in the center panel. And you can expand or collapse those entries or those related resources visually. That helps you, I think, as you're using them. Before I forget, one of your colleagues mentioned that she had begun using the system and didn't see report data as percentages. So let me let you know that you can go to the top of your screen. Your initials should be in a red circle. You can click on the caret or down arrow next to that and go to account settings. The bottom settings, the alert settings, are not really relevant to you. For our users who come directly to our dashboard, those alerts trigger particular fields on the dashboard that would help manage student use, but you'll be able to access those in a different way. However, the first choice, report settings, is the one that you'll need to make sure you've set appropriately. So you can choose either to see reports in points or in percentages. Unless you're doing standards-based assessments and grading, most of us would prefer points or percentage rather than points. And so you would change it to that and click save. And then you're going to see the data in the way that I mentioned. If you're navigating back and forth, can always go to the My Library menu item and choose your particular level. You're not going to have all of these displayed. You'll just have the one that is relevant, the grade level and level that would be relevant to you, or grade levels if you happen to teach more than one grade level. So in terms of resources, down the left-hand side, the first thing that you see is beginning of year. There are 2 assessments. I would not expect this year that you would use them. The diagnostic, generally because you're doing on grade level work, wouldn't be relevant to what you're doing. Perhaps next year, it might be the choice of the district or your school to administer the pre-test. And then there is an end of year test, a post test that could also be administered to look at growth across the year. This year, because you're starting late in the year and are not going to be able to cover all the units, that would not be a good resource to use. You'll notice the structure of the program is that there are units of study, 3 units of study at a time, followed by unit reviews. So we know that space learning is really critical for students' retention of vocabulary words, moving them from short-term to long-term memory. And with the right type of review in place, students will remember these words that they've deeply learned 10 years later. So the review reviews the 3 previous units, and the cumulative review will review 6-unit chunks, so that students are getting that continued exposure to the vocabulary words. And then there are word study units that are focused on teaching students explicitly the strategies that they need to acquire to learn how to build their own vocabulary. So that includes morphology, for instance, so work with classical roots. At the unit level, there are a number of different types of resources. There are the primary instructional resources, there are the practice resources, and there are some additional practice resources, a unit assessment, an item bank, games and study aids, and please don't think that those are frivolous. Those are critical for students' development of that deep vocabulary knowledge, and there's good research around that. Same with graphic organizers. Students really benefit from the use of graphic organizers, particularly if you have English learners. So all of these resources have very intentional purposes and are going to be a part of what will be used. In terms of instruction, there is a unit passage. That unit passage is always available to students, and it's not assignable. So if you note, there is an icon to the left of each of the instructional resources, and then there are a series of icons to the right. That first icon is the preview icon, just allows you to see what that resource is. The second icon is the assign icon, and the third icon is more, and depending on the resource, that functionality might differ. You'll notice that the assign icon is grayed out for the unit passage. That is because students always have access to it. It's not necessary to assign that resource. Each unit has 20 words that are taught in that unit. And cognitively, particularly for middle school students, it's better practice to focus on 10 words at a time. We know that that's the way that our brains work, and there's a good body of research around that number of words to work with at a time. So the words are divided into 2 sets of 10, set A and set B. And it is important for you to discuss the words and their meaning, their synonyms, their antonyms, to provide example sentences. This is not something that students should rotely memorize. And so we provide that resource as a tool for you to use instructionally, for the teachers that you work with to use instructionally. So they can display the vocabulary word, they can go full screen, they can increase the magnification, they can use it as it is, or show multiple items at a time, so all of the vocabulary words at once. And you have the ability to key in that word, and that's really there. It might seem unimportant, but we have a body of research that shows that having students actually key in the word, and then perhaps substituting a definition, a synonym rather, and seeing that cognitively is important. You can also use the show answers function, and it will automatically fill that in. but that really is designed for student support. And you can annotate. So you've got your annotation tools here, your pen, and you can choose the color of it and focus on a particular aspect of the definition or a synonym, a particular part of the sentence as you're having that discussion about the vocabulary words. It is also possible to print. When you print, you're getting, and you won't need to scramble, that's a function that is important for printing an assessment. But what you'll notice is you get an abbreviated version. We did this so that it would fit on a single page, and it was a reference for students. It's not intended to be a study resource per se. The word, the part of speech, and a definition as a resource for students. So students will work with the set A words first. So there's the set A practice, 3 exercises, more contextually focused than definitionally focused. You'll see the definitional support in a bit. And so you may want to assign those. You may also want to assign the instructional videos. Now, the instructional videos are a study support for students.
Alight. Alight. Alight functions as 2 parts of speech. It can be used as a verb, meaning to get down from or to come down from the air. A robot probe may alight on the surface of Mars. Alight can also be used as an adjective.
And so forth. Of course, you can go full screen with that, or students can use that independently. So if you want to assign, and we have already received feedback about this assignment function, and I will find a way to share that with our shared services team to see if we can do something that might make it more appropriate for you. But you will click on that assign icon. You'll need to determine if you want to assign only one resource at a time, or if you may find it more efficient to assign multiple resources. So click on the add resources. I typically would assign in middle school the definitions, the instructional videos, and all of the set A or set B exercises at once. So I would click add. And then you're able to choose your class or classes. So depending on your particular set of circumstances, you may have your students on sort of the same track instructionally, or you may not, but you may add multiple classes. And then a start date and time and an end date and time. So generally we suggest 2 weeks of study. So you would make your determination around that. It defaults to an end time of 11:45 p.m. As I told the high school group, that's not really a concern for most middle school and high school teachers. For elementary teachers, parents freak about 11:45 p.m. as the end time, but you certainly can alter that. You may also use a grace period. There are some good things about a grace period, and there's one catch about a grace period. So I want to be clear about the catch as well as the advantages. A grace period means that you and your students know the end date, and you know if students turn in the particular assignment, submit the particular assignment by the due date. But if you want students to be able to submit after that due date, then you would choose the grace period and choose when students needed to turn that particular assignment in by. So those are the primary assign functions for most assignments. You can create groups for a class. So if you've created groups, you'll see that group show up in your drop-down menu. As here, I've created a group for this particular class, and I can assign to a smaller group rather than the whole class if I want to. So my choice for whether I would want to do that or not. You've got that option as a part of what you're going to do. When I click save, then students will, if the start date and time is now, automatically have that particular assignment. So again, you click on this icon, an interactive form pops up, you complete that form, you save it, and then at the appropriate date and time, students have access to that resource. So teachers would and students would work with set A words first, do the set A definitions, the set A instructional videos, and the set A practice, and then move to set B. It's the same routine, your set B definitions, your set B instructional videos, the same exercise types with the set B words. And then you move to working with all of the words together. You have a couple of definitional exercises and an exercise that does not auto grade. Writing words in action is an exercise that teachers would need to grade. Everything else, when you don't have those open-ended items, it auto scores. But in this case, you would get an indicator that you needed to grade that particular assignment. Vocabulary in context uses any words that weren't in the first passage in it. It is a briefer passage related thematically to the first, and the items are intended to mirror state assessment items. So it's a very brief exercise. It gives students more practice with those words. So you can assign those exercises. Of course, you could assign all of the exercises in the unit at the same time, or you can stage it depending on your students. There is an additional practice option. This is not something that has to be assigned. You might give this to students that are stronger students or students who need more exposures. So the other vocabulary in context is with informational text. This is using snippets of classic literature and the words in the context of a particular series of sentences. There is a pre-built unit assessment. There's also a practice test. Teachers typically consider the practice test as a not graded item. The unit test is, of course, typically a graded item. And with assigning assessments, you generally want to keep in mind that you don't want students seeing it before the start time in class. So if I wanted to assign it for the end of that particular time period, no, I wouldn't do it Christmas Eve. And class begins at 9 o'clock, I'd have, or 9:15 or whatever, I'd have that as the start time. And keeping in mind that the items are generally, if they're selected response items, not more than a minute each. So you would want to not give students too much time. The issue of student integrity came up in the previous group. And I will tell you that the biggest opportunity for students to take advantage of whatever resources might be available to them in whatever way is when they have too much time to take an assessment. So keeping it focused is important. Obviously, you wouldn't use a grace period with an assessment. If you happen to have students who have an IEP that requires fewer distractors, then you would be able to limit the choices, the number of distractors, to 2 or 3. Not only can you create a small group, but you can actually uncheck every student and just check a single student that you're making an assignment for, so you have that option. You can scramble the questions if you want to do a little more to ensure integrity. And so you can move from there and click save, and then the student or students would have access. You notice that it tells me it's a future time. Absolutely it is. I intended that. You can also edit that assessment. And so the way that you edit the assessment, and I will tell you, as I told the other group, I have a loaner laptop and I have some calibration issues. So this is, I hopefully not going to give you a strange experience, but click on that more icon, click edit assessment, and this is where my calibration issue shows up. What you'll be able to do is uncheck items that you don't want to include in the assessment. And lovely. There we go. So you can see that there are a series of questions and the question types are varied. And perhaps rather than having 20 items, maybe I don't want to include these definitional items. I would uncheck that and click save. And then I need to name that. it will show up rather than under assessment, under custom assessments. So you can see that alternative unit test that I built, and I am able to assign that. It did not alter the unit test, which remains as it was, so that that's there in the future. And with custom built assessments, they're with you from year to year so that you can continue to use those assessments. In terms of the item bank or custom assessments, you would click build an assessment, and it could be custom practice. You are able to focus on a single unit, or you can go from unit to unit. If you happen to choose a different unit, you'll need to apply the filter to have the items from that unit show up. And you can combine units. You could also choose all units. You can choose a whole category. So I might choose analogies, and I also might happen to want to choose particular items, so I can click the plus sign and expand. You'll see different parts of speech used. So here we've got and different tenses, and you'll see singular and plural. So here you see the tense change. So I may or may not choose that depending on the students that I'm working with. I might have a group of students for whom I narrow my word list, and so I might create an alternative assessment in that case. I may have a student or two who I want to give more challenging items to, so I might do that. So you can go from category to category if you want to, and choose items. And then once you have selected all of the items, you can preview your assessment. If you decide that there's something you want to remove, you can just click the trash can. You click save and name that particular assessment. Add directions. And that particular custom built item, or any of your custom built items, can be shared with your colleagues. So if several of you teach the same grade level and you want to divide up creating additional practice or assessments, then you would just click on that more icon and click share assessment. I'm going to have the same calibration issue, and you will see a list of all the teachers in your school, and you can click on click in the field box next to the teacher's name to share that particular assessment. So you'll have that capability. And those assessments can be printed if you had a student that you needed to print materials from, and you'll see in most cases the print icon is available. But with assessments, when you print any of the assessments, you will be able to scramble, so you can have up to 5 versions of that particular assessment and in print format. I can't imagine why you would do that unless a student might have an IEP that would require it, but you certainly have that capability. I mentioned games and study aids. These are all assignable. So you have your iWords, which is does not include the visual that the video does. Those are also downloadable. You can look at set A, set B, or set A and set B. Includes the audio passage and the audio for each of the words and their definitions and the sentence. You have flashcards, and the flashcards, again, set A, set B, you can go from unit to unit. Students can use them by word or by definition. You can also flag words that you have difficulty with, and then just show your flagged words. So that's a good study aid for students. You have a series of graphic organizers, and students are able to use these. Of course, they're printable, as most of the resources are. They can use the annotation tools, so they are able to draw or create text boxes to key in. And certainly graphic organizers are a great way of deepening your understanding of the words. So you have all of those resources with each unit. With your unit reviews, you have vocabulary for comprehension part 1 and part 2. I love the vocabulary for comprehension. A brief passage followed by a series of questions, including comprehension questions that really are very much like state assessments and like ACT and SAT, which I know is in the future for a lot of your students, but good practice. And it's really the way we use vocabulary. And then synonyms and two-word completions. There are also 2 test prep passages. So again, a piece of text that students will read and questions related to that. All of these are assignable, and your games and your study aids. The reason for assigning games and study aids is that you can track students' use of them. Some teachers like to do that. Some teachers don't ever assign them. Students have access to them, whether you assign them or not. So it's really there for you to make a determination of whether you want to monitor students' use of those resources. And then cumulative review has a cumulative assessment and 2-word completions. 2-word completions is a challenging exercise. So teachers generally would assign that to students that are ready for a bit of a challenge. So the assign process, again, is to click on that center icon, use the interactive form, add resources as you want, add classes as you want, use a grace period if you want, modify the number of choices, scramble questions if you would like to do that, assign to a group, assign to an individual student, assign to whole class. Every unit is designed, every word study unit, every cumulative review and unit review has that same structure with items that you can assign. Once you've assigned something, then students, if you assign it with a start date of today, would immediately have access. So let me just log out, and your students, of course, would come in from your system the same way that you would. Once you've assigned something, then students would log in and they would have an assignment view, their graded view, and their library would not have all of these resources. It would just have your particular grade levels vocabulary book, which they could click on and access. So it just happens that I have all of the resources in the program, and students can mark their last user favorite, and that's what's going to pop up. And since you only have that one grade level, it's going to automatically show for students. And of course, I had it marked as favorite, but did something in between to unmark it. So I apologize for that. So when students go into Achieve, if they choose the book cover, they'll have the unit passage, they'll have the definitions, they'll have the games and study aids and graphic organizers. So they can access those without them being assigned. But again, if you want to monitor students' use, you would want to assign those. They can go directly to an assignment. So the assignments that I made, you could start with whichever one you would want to start with as a student. This is not, sorry about that. Students would be able to save and exit, or save and continue. If you save and exit, you will see that it's in progress. So you'll see the items that are in progress. That's because the student started those items and still needs to work on them. If you're assigning a lot of things at one time, students can sort by due date. If you're focused on your unit, that's generally not going to be an issue. Your students are not going to have all of those resources. So if I start an exercise, and I'm just going to go through quickly and not try to answer correctly, just want to and click submit. If I have not finished, I can continue. And I can click my word list. I can see the word. I can see the definition of the word that scrolls with me, as does a reminder that I need to save. When I click submit, then if I've not put in a grace period, students not only will see the grade, but can see item level detail. If I put in a grace period as I did, they can see their grade, but they can't view the particular assignment. So it's important to make that determination. So if you view an assignment, you'll see what's correct and incorrect or skipped. You can see the skipped items. You'll notice that it does not give the correct answer. That's intentional. The authors truly believe students should go back and study, and then be able to revisit if you wanted to reassign that particular assignment. So that's the student experience generally. I'm sure there are some things that you might want to know more about later, but that should give you just a brief sense of what it's like. Once students have completed an assignment, then teachers generally are going to want to start to monitor that. So if you're at your book, and again, you don't have this same view, but if you're in your book with your table of contents to your left, above the bar that has your program's logo is a menu. And My Library, of course, lets you choose your level. Assignments would be where you would monitor the status of assignments. So if you have an assignment you need to grade, writing words in action, it will, for instance, it will default to that view so that you'll be encouraged to grade that assignment. You can always change it by modifying the filters. So I can choose one class or all classes. So if I just wanted to look at my grade 7 class, I could do that. I could look at all assignments or graded or active or pending. I can look at a particular unit if I want to. I have to apply the filter. And when I do that, I see assignments that are given. I can go from one of my particular classes to another class. Again, see what's there. So here's that unit test I assigned a little bit earlier. You'll notice it's pending because the date that students would have access to it is in the future. You'll see that there's a pencil, and next to that pencil is a caret or a down arrow icon. When you click on that, you see that I can look at this resource. I can delete this assignment. You can only delete assignments that not a single student has started. So I can delete this particular assignment because none of my students have started that. I assigned a number of exercises together. It clusters those exercises. So to see them, I need to click on that caret, and here are those exercises. You'll notice that most of them don't have this little icon because the students haven't done them. So again, I can delete them. I can also edit that assignment. So I could change the time parameters. I could uncheck a student if I needed to do that. So maybe a student is absent and I want to, maybe they have a long-term absence. I want to remove them from that assignment. I can do that. Again, if students have completed that assignment, then I'm going to see this icon. So when I click on that icon, you'll see the students that have not started that assignment. You'll see the students that are late in submitting, if they were late in submitting. Here's the grade for that student. Here's the item level detail. When all the students have completed and you see the item level detail, you can click in on a particular item and see the number of students who answered correctly or incorrectly displayed, so that if you wanted to pull a group of students together and discuss an item that they found confusing, you could do that. You can also click here to view the particular item. If an item is expired, that generally means that not a single student has done that assignment. You're able to edit that assignment and extend the time period for that assignment. If an item shows as graded, not expired, so you can see this item, for instance, then I need to reassign it because that means students have done it. They've received a grade. If I want them to do it again, the system will keep the initial score and will match the new score to that initial assignment. So I would just click reassign, and I would complete the dates that I wanted and make it accessible. So that assignment view allows you to see the status of students' completion of assignments and to make adjustments to assignments as appropriate. You also have a series of reports. The first report that you have is the activity report. That report is designed to show you students' use of the games. In my case, I've got a lot of game activity, so it takes quite some time for it to process. But generally speaking, it would not take that long to process. You have a series of other reports. You have the student tracking report. That shows any student use of the system. Student trend report looks at 8 weeks of student performance and shows it graphically so that you can see if students are making progress. So this is an example of the game report, and I could select a particular class or a particular grade level or a particular game and look at the student results relative to that. I have the student score report. This is one that's used quite frequently. So you can choose a particular class. You can choose a single student in that class, or you can choose the whole class. You can choose a date range. You can choose a particular chapter or unit, unit's what it would be, and apply the filters, and then you'll see all the data for that student or students, group or class or classes. You can print it or you can export it. It's a comma separated file, so put it into Excel or Numbers or whatever it is that you might use to have that grading data available. And then the other report that you would typically use would be the class assessment report. We saw the drill down version of that under assignments, but again, you would choose your particular class. And you could choose a single student or a group. In my case, I have a lot of products, so I want to just make sure that I'm looking at the one that I would like to pay attention to. I can apply the filters. It's going to show me the data. I can drill in. I can see the data for practice by unit. I can see the data for assessments. I can drill into a particular assignment and get the item level detail. For that assignment, I can sort by grade or by alphabetical order if I would like. And as I mentioned, if there's an item that you'd like to see, students have missed and you'd like to know who didn't answer correctly, you can start to drill down and get that information. You can also view that item from here. So it gives you a good sense of where there's an area of concern to be able to make adjustments instructionally and quickly have that available for you. So that's really the basics. Most important is to know how to assign and to know how to look at the assignments to monitor the status of where students are. And I think if you're able to support teachers in doing that, that's going to be a big help. I can go into a lot more detail on any of this. My experience is that if you cover much more of this with most teachers, we can only process so much. And we tend to only use what's immediately important to us, which is why focusing on how you assign is important, because those are the first steps that all the teachers are going to want to take. And then we can certainly get back together later to talk more about things like reporting or higher level functionality that might be available, but getting that basic piece in place is important. Do you feel like you understand sort of the basics of how you assign and where you would get status of assignments?
So if I could, hi, this is Cece at Bay Creek. So when I look at my account, I only see, I'm not seeing it the other way that you showed. So I am wondering.
You have not yet made any assignments, correct? So
No.
I would expect you'd see these resources and I would expect that you'd see the assign icon, but you won't have assignments yet because you've not made any assignments. You won't have reports yet because you don't have any data. So is that what you're seeing, or is there something else that you're seeing?
Well, when you went out to compare the view of the student view and the teacher view, once I go in, I'm not seeing, I don't see that. And
when I logged in as a student, you would have to log in as a student to see the student view.
okay, so I'm able to use an alternate email address in order to get a student view. And does it have to be a Gwinnett County email address?
In order to see a student, you would need to use one of your students' logins to get that student view. One of the things that we're working on, and Kimberly, maybe you should explain what Charlie's working on so that they might have a better sense of what that view is like.
Yeah, so I'm going to share with you right now. I had my own son give me his eClass login. And let me just tell you, that was like pulling teeth with a 15-year-old. But he gave me his login, and I did a couple of screenshots so that you can see what like a student sees, because it's populated for them in their eClass. But Charlie is working on doing kind of a special project with Sadlier to help kind of walk through that interaction between, here's what the teacher's doing, here's what the students are seeing. This is how students are interacting, and then this is what it looks like when the teacher gets it back. So, Charlie, do you want to say anything? I don't want to take you completely off guard, but we know that that's a need. And because of how Gwinnett works, I can't do that. Like, I can't even do it for my own kid to go in and pretend to be his teacher, even though I have access to the resource.
Oh, okay.
So that's coming. It is coming, and I'm about to drop the link of screenshots from Carter's login, just so you can see what it looks like.
Okay. And the other thing I was wondering is, on your view, we're seeing a lesson planner. Do we get that opportunity also? How are we able to plan in Sadlier?
That is coming. It is not, we have it for some of our products. We, for vocabulary, because it is not the core, it's not available yet, but that will be something that would be available.
Okay. Thank you.
Certainly.
A question came up about adding a co-teacher. Is there a way, like, for teachers to, so a large number of our teachers have a co-teacher. Is there a way to add a teacher? Okay, perfect.
David, we'll have to work with David on that, but yes, that is a part of the.
Excellent.
We just need to know what school, what class, etc. But so I guess, Kimberly, if they would let you know, then.
Oh, there's going to be lots of them.
Oh, they wonder what the best way to do that is.
Yeah, so let's think through that when we connect with them again.
Okay.
But yes, it will be, because I think, Jessica, am I wrong? Are you trying to, is it about having the co-teacher situation, like for special ed?
Yeah, thinking through how to add the special ed co-teachers, or maybe our ESOL teacher who pushes in to support.
Yeah, that's really not a problem. We have that all over the country where special ed and ESOL teachers are co-teachers of classrooms. It's not a difficult thing to do. Kimberly, we just need to figure out the who's and the classes and work with David on getting that done. But it's not complicated.
Good. And Michelle Fuller had a question, and I know this came up in the high school thing, so it might be worth doing this. She asked about questions on the assessment. Are they editable or just removable?
They're just removable. And I explained to the high school group, and this is certainly something we have been considering more frequently recently. We used to have all of our assessments be editable. And what happened is that we were getting daily calls from parents who were upset. They called our customer service that we had spelling errors or grammatical errors or incorrect answers And when we would investigate, it would be something that a teacher had created. We don't have a good vetting system for adding items. And so, or editing items. So we removed that function. We have not sustained it, but the climate's changing there. I think certainly that's an expectation for a lot of folks. And so that's under consideration. It would not be something we would add this school year, but it's certainly something for us to, that's on the table for us to add in the future.
I think we've all experienced that in the district. You heard mention of our SchoolNet assessment platform, and people can submit to that. And often people assume because it's sitting in SchoolNet, it must be vetted and approved. And that just is not the case. And we've had similar issues come up there, not because our language arts teachers don't know how to spell. It's just sometimes when you're rushing and working on things collaboratively, little oversights happen.
Well, any publisher will tell you, you can have many layers of quality assurance and still things slip through. So it's just the reality of it. But if someone else creates it, we don't have authority over it. So we can't edit it to fix it. So it just becomes a challenge for us. But we are considering allowing that again. So thank you for your voiced desire for that.
So I just wanted to kind of share with you all kind of like how to get ready to support others. And again, we are, we're going to be providing some things. We do have Charlie working directly with Sadlier to kind of give you that, that just in time, I guess, teacher perspective. But the number one ask, and, get gracious, it doesn't need to be this week or next, is that you all get in there and you poke around in the resource yourself, that you start experimenting with different things. This is, it is super easy to use. I mean, it's really easy to use, but there's a lot to kind of puzzle through in like, oh, am I going to take it in a sequence? I'm going to do bits and pieces. So just kind of get in there and play around. And we are not going to say, like, as a district, everybody needs to begin in January doing X, Y, and Z. But we want to use the spring semester 1 to learn the resource, 2 to begin to address some of the vocabulary concerns that we are seeing emerging from our students, but really to get ready for layering this resource in as a support for our own framework for instruction for language arts. So, and as things come up, Charlie noticed several things, and because he got in there and started, trying it out with kids, as things come up, let us know so that we can better think through how to address it when we roll this out to 600 middle school teachers. Do you all have any, question is what time is so we have a couple of questions. So Pam just asked, how does the workbook connect to the online version? So Ellen, I'll let you address that in just a minute. On the 5th, the high school training is from 1 to 2. The middle school training is going to be 2:15 to 3:15. And it will be recorded, but it would be really helpful if at least a few people from each school can hop on. And we're doing it in just an hour. We're doing it at the end of the day, but not at the very end of the day, in hopes that you can get all of your school stuff done. So that is going out to principals and assistant principals in the CNI weekly email on Monday. But I'll probably do something to language arts assistant principals tomorrow, just for a heads up. All right, so Ellen, do you want to address the connection between the actual book and Sadlier Connect? Like how the digital works with the print, and it might provide some clarity on why we only are giving teachers the print.
So the print and the digital really have fidelity. The teacher's edition has some instructional guidance in it but it's an annotated teacher's edition. So the front pages are your support and guidance for instruction. The student pages actually will be mirrored in what's in the online resources. So you'll see as you turn to the student pages in your teacher's edition, the unit passage, the definitions. The definitions are abbreviated. They're the synonyms, et cetera, are included in the online. They're not in the print. You'll see these student practice set A, set B. You'll see the set A and set B. You wouldn't see the additional practice. You would not see the unit test. Those are secured. And so students would not have access to that. But there is fidelity between the two. So we have found that particularly in middle grades and high school, students are much more engaged with it being digital, and that it allows for much stronger differentiation. So there's really not a reason to use the print. If you had a reason to have a print page for a few students, as I mentioned, there's always the print icon, so you can print these resources and you're within copyright if you do that. But we find that it's much stronger to use the interactive edition. If you had a student with special needs who could only be in print and you wanted the rest of the class using the digital, though, there's fidelity, so that would certainly be something that would be feasible. So
Thank you.
certainly.
And the print is not expensive. Like as a local school, if you all elected to purchase a few copies of the print, you certainly could do that. But, you know, for a district-wide purchase, knowing that we would likely have to purchase them every year or so, it would not be a wise district purchase. But there's nothing to say that you all couldn't, buy a few if you elected to do so as a school. All right, well, we'll linger for a minute in case anyone has additional questions, but I do want to thank you all very much for joining. We know it is a super busy time of year, but we wanted you all to have a glimpse before we start training everyone else in January. And like I said, just go in and start poking around a little bit. And when you see things or if things don't make sense, let us know so that we can, try to get some things ironed out. We were talking, Sadlier is different from HMH, right? HMH is like this massive company. Sadlier is a family owned, it's a smaller company. And the advantage is it's super responsive. Like they are super, super responsive. So when we see like little things, if there's something that they can adjust, whether it's on their end or the district's end, they've been great so far about helping to make those adjustments. So we'll hang out, but you all are free to leave and have a fabulous last week and a half.
Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you for your time. We're really looking forward to partnering with you. And I know you're going to be a super resource for the teachers in your school, and it's going to make a really big difference in terms of implementation. We know one-shot professional development does not result in good implementation. And so you'll be a wonderful support to help those folks in your building who need a little additional coaching and support. So thank you.
Thank you, Ellen, for the training today, and Kimberly allowing us to be here. And we're just very honored to be serving you. And so, as I said, please, Kimberly, can you give them our email addresses? And if they need us, please get in touch with us.
I will do that.
It looked like Ms. Alexander might have a question. If you did, just chime in.
Yes, I had two questions. Sorry. My first question was, you said there was a drawback to the grace periods for the assignments. What are the
Drawback is that students can't see the item level feedback. They know they know their grade, but they don't know what they got wrong. So they're not able to study. Now that's something we're considering modifying. We're working with a group of teachers around that, but right now that's the one drawback just to be aware of.
Okay. That's one thing. And then the second thing was, how are the high schools implementing this into their class period? I assume their classes are an hour like ours are. How are they implementing this and so it's actually effective in the classroom? So I don't want to just sit them on the computer and say, hey, do this. Like, what does it look like?
So just like our middle schools, our high schools have huge variation in class periods. So yeah, we have got middle schools with the shortest period being 43 minutes. And then we've got other middle schools that have 90 minutes for language arts. Our high schools run different variations of block. So our recommendation, and you see this on our how do I fit it all in, isn't to think about this in a day, it's to think about it in a week. And, can you find 20 minutes in a week? And I know the answer is yes, and we're going to work on helping you find that to provide the direct instruction, but then will there be adequate time for kids to practice? And y'all, we have them doing all kinds of things independently right now. And well, I won't call out the name of the resource because if you've done PD, our kids have had ample time using a lot of other digital texts that they're practicing through various resources. We would go far to do some intentional work. So maybe rather than in a week, giving them yet another common lit passage, maybe we carve out some time for them to do some intentional work around vocabulary. But as a team, we're going to start, we've talked today, you'll see in our units beginning next year where we're building in some time for that to happen as well. Carla had a really good question about the print feature, and it appears to be disabled. And I don't think that's what we want to have happen. So Ellen, Carla said the print feature has been disabled. Is there no way to give kids a hard copy of the passage, perhaps to annotate with the initial reading?
You may have had someone make a selection in your system choices to preclude students from being able to print, but all of the resources either have the print icon or you can use your device print commands. So, in the case of my Mac, it's a Command P. It might be Control P. It might be Function P or Function F8 or something with your device. But whatever that is, then it shows up in the browser and you can print it from there. So you should not have anything other than, we do typically recommend blocking students printing assessments. So that's typically blocked, but we don't generally recommend blocking printing of other resources.
But when you were going over the homepage that has the overview in the beginning of the year, what you refer to as the table of contents, for each unit, the first item listed under instruction is the unit passage.
Right.
You pointed out how the print feature was grayed out because we couldn't print it.
Oh, no, that's the assign function. You see this print icon that I'm showing you right now?
Okay, so I have to open the actual passage itself and then the print is there.
That is correct.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah, no,
That was a great question though.
It's also under more options.
Yeah, you do have the click more and print from here too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, either place you can print.
That's good to bring up though, because we know that probably 200 other teachers are going to catch the same thing and have the same question.
I have another quick question. I don't know if it's because I'm 8th grade, but my default for Sadlier is on level C. However, I do work with 6th, 7th, and 8th, and I'm not seeing a feature that allows me to change that level.
Okay, so what that again is a David Dillard thing that we'll need to work on. I don't know if there are other people in that same situation where we need to add additional licenses.
Yeah, so Cece, let your LSTC know tomorrow. In any class for which you are teacher of record, you should be able to see the resource. And if there is a complication, like one of the things that I've brought up to Kim Moore is just for you all, could we give you access to all the levels? Like I know Carla's 6th grade, but in supporting all teachers, could she have access to all 3, even though the tool works the same? I mean, you all know your colleagues want to see it with their grade level. So we'll work on that, but your situation is different because you're a special education teacher, correct?
Yes.
You do have all 3 grade levels. So
I do, right.
Ask your LSTC first, and then we're doing some behind the scenes work to see if we can give all of you access to all 3.
Right. Because I mean, that's the whole plan, to support teachers on all levels.
Right.
So I'd want to be able to access and, be able to show them. And like I say, I also teach all 3 levels. So
right. Yeah.
That's
And I will say, Kimberly, Sadlier gave you 100 and some extra licenses.
That's what I thought.
So for this kind of purpose. So, and if there's any concern around it, we can add more. So please, just so that we're supporting everybody, we're happy to help with that.
Okay, that's awesome. But Cece should have been given access just because she does actually teach all 3 grade levels. But like I said, I keep using Carla because she's right in front of me on the camera. But Carla teaches 6th grade, but in order to provide support to all, it would be helpful, although not necessary, it would be helpful for buy-in purposes if she could show 8th grade. So we'll work on that. We have a list of things, which is another reason why we wanted to do a little pre-training with you all, so we could kind of puzzle through the things before we introduce to everyone.
Although I messed up the printing thing, so I don't know that I need to be
I
demonstrating.
don't think you messed it up. I
you don't
actually
need
think
that another one.
I think you asked the question that literally 200 other people are going to ask. So no, wouldn't consider that a mess up at all.
Oh.
I have a question about the units. So I know everything is separate into units, and you said that we're doing 20 minutes a week. So is there a suggested time frame for each unit, or are we just working through
2 weeks?
2 weeks, okay.
Yeah, and when we're saying 20 minutes, Tia, we're saying like that's the part at minimum that we would want direct instruction for. That doesn't mean that's the only time kids would practice.
Okay.
And we may adjust that. This is the first time bringing this back onto our framework. Well, bringing it back on. It always existed. Word study existed in the K-5 framework, but we're not as intentional about it in the secondary. So we may adjust it. We may see how that goes, but we know that there needs to be some explicit instruction. And then we know kids need time to practice as well.
Definitely.
Right.
So how do you all feel? Like, do you think that this could happen? You're excited?
I'm excited, yes. That there's actually a vocabulary online. I like this, what I've seen so far.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that I was thinking about it, that I would structure it like a pre-test, post-test, with the lessons, just to gauge students where they are initially, and then be able to see what the level of growth, giving it as a post-test after the 2-week study.
It's a great idea. So you could either use the practice test as the pre-test, or you could create, using the custom assessments, create a pre-test and then use the unit test as the post-test. So I think that's a good way to look at growth.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the thing that I really like, what makes this resource stand out to me is, one, like I am like a morphology girl. I used to be a master trainer for Princeton Review. So I believe in the importance of knowing how to build words from other words and to break apart a word you see, you know, based on what you know about roots, affixes, suffixes, and so on. So that was really, really important to me. But the other thing that was really important, and I'll be curious to see how your kids interact with it, because we haven't yet tried this in middle, but I will say in high school it was really successful, is that the vocabulary work is happening in authentic text. So although we need explicit vocabulary instruction and practice, ultimately this is about their reading. Like, we want this to impact their reading and their writing. So I'm excited to hear how your kids engage with the texts that are in there, because it is different from just always working with like a random isolated sentence. And that's what you often will find in vocabulary resources.
I'm excited because, like, for so long, and this happens with all of us in so many different areas where we're all out here on our own creating these things from scratch.
Yeah.
And we've been doing this in 8th grade here at Cruz for like 10 years. And it's so nice to have it done. You know, when we look at the sections, it's the stuff that I'm sure many of us have been doing for years, you know, synonyms, using the word in a sentence, the definitions, also, even the fill in the blanks, just the various different ways that you're using the words, that it's just so nice to have it all pulled together. And whereas we were adding that layer onto texts we were already reading.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so time consuming too.
Yeah. And like, there's value to it because you know, it changes and deepens the exposure to the text. But I think it's also valuable that there's a whole nother set of texts that kids are going to be exposed to as a result of this. So they're going to be reading more as a result.
Thank you, Lord Jesus.
Right?
And that's one of the things that we've discussed here at Five Forks numerous times, is just their background knowledge seems to be so much more limited now than it used to be. So just getting exposed to so many different more topics, with the driving force being the vocabulary, but just getting that exposure to different topics and something a little bit more in depth, I think is going to make a huge difference in itself.
I think so too. I mean, and we've been doing this work. I mean, Charlie, I'm kind of laughing because, and Carla will probably remember this too, but remember the old school days with the Brookwood Cluster Vertical Team and building out that progression of, you know, vocabulary and roots and so on. I mean, I think we did it in the Parkview cluster when I did my APP residency there. This is work we know, every bit of research from Beck, Marzano, this research doesn't change. It's just, like I said, we've drifted from it, and it is important, and we've got to bring it back, because when their reading is interrupted because they don't have the background knowledge, as Carla said, or literally the decoding is interrupting everything, vocabulary is in the way, it's hard to pull out any of the other strategies. So I'm excited. I'm happy for you all, because this one was easy to do because it was an extension of an adoption. So yeah, I'm excited, and I'm glad you all are excited too. It affirms for me your principals chose the right people. So so again, no formal anything. The initial ask, just go in there, poke around, play around. If you see holes, you know, good gracious, we'd rather know them right now, before, because you all have been in those trainings when we invite everyone. If there's a hole, they're going to point it out. And so if you see things, kind of let us know so that we can figure things out, because some of it is, you know, on the Sadlier end, and you heard Ellen, I mean, she's super responsive to it, but some of it is just how it was set up on the GCPS end. And fortunately, they work as a team and can find, you know, good solutions for it. So I appreciate you all tons, especially doing this time of year. I know probably a staff development after school with 8 school days left in the middle of exams or getting ready for exams.
Yeah.
Probably was not,
Grading.
yeah, grading, probably not ideal. But like I said, it happened so fast. The board approved the 3rd week of November and boom, it was on. And
Awesome.
I don't even think I had a chance to email the language arts APs. And it was on. So that's all great. So I want you all to have a fabulous break. And I hope you do fun stuff and don't think about GCPS.
Awesome.
Kimberly, can I ask a question?
No.
Okay. It can wait then. Never mind.
No, you can ask your question.
And like anybody can stay and listen, but it's just me probably nerding out farther than I need to. So I wanted to ask a clarifying question about the 2-week time period. That is for a unit. So that's 2 sets of 10, right? And so that's set A, or do we choose a set? Do you see what I'm saying?
Ellen, I think this one is you, because you got more experience with this one than I do.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I thought there were 10 words in a unit. Set A was, 10.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
It's
So
10 words.
No, I thought set A was 10 and set B was 10.
Was
They
10,
they're
yeah.
for 10 and 10.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's in a single unit.
That's correct.
And so what I'm trying to like think through, and some prescription drugs for sinus infection are getting in front of me being able to do this is, there are 15 units. So I think one of the things we want to think through is pacing and, just with the other realities of what we have to do each week. And don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about we as language arts teachers. I mean, like when we have an advisement schedule, when we have a digital day, when we have all these other things
Right.
that are beyond our control.
Mhm.
Like when we begin to talk about this to other teachers and to larger groups, trying to, and obviously the spring semester is a little bit different because it's really just a tinkering, just trying to get in there, dive in, but like really thinking through what is reasonable for a 9 weeks, for a semester, for a year, at this number, to get the kids as many words as possible, but be reasonable.
So Charlie, one of the things that I'm wondering, because my team, we talked about this today and we were like, we've got to figure this out. I'm wondering if for Gwinnett, the solution is to think about units in a 9-week period.
Mm-hmm.
That, because here's the reality. Some of our 9 weeks are actually shorter than other 9-week periods.
Right.
So I'm wondering if we think through it that way, that perhaps, and look, I'm not like, I got to factor in COGAT schedule, all that other crazy stuff, but what if we say it's, perhaps 3 units in quarter 1, 2 in quarter 2, 3 in quarter 3, or, however we shake it out so that we can get it all in. And then that would respond, I think, to Brianna's question about like for our schools, because for as crazy as high school is with their scheduling, middle school, 43 minutes to 90, like, well, not 90, like 75. It's a huge range. It's a huge range. And so I'm wondering if we play around with a recommendation like that.
Well, and then the other thing we'll want to keep in mind is the structure of the platform.
Yeah.
Because what you probably won't want to do is to try to do, say, 4 units in a 9 weeks.
Yeah.
Because then what you've got is you've got your reviews and assessments and things that are really set up just for 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
And then yes, you could edit or do the 1 per unit 4, but then it would still be a separate entity.
Yeah.
And I think that would just be. Go ahead, Shane. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's great thinking too. And this is why I really like Vocabulary Workshop Achieve as a first-time user, because the 20 words are divided into 2 sets of 10.
Right.
Which really makes it very manageable for you and the students. and then you can weave it like it usually it's 2 weeks for 20 words. Okay, so you've got a unit with set A and set B, 20 words that you can use. You can do your grouping that way. Set A, set B, 1 unit with 20 words. Now the high school, theirs is 20 words altogether in a 2-week time. So see, this is why I'm so happy y'all have Achieve, but you're still getting that same explicit instruction, only a little more manageable. And it does give you some, leeway with your different schedules.
Yeah, because we do. So we'll kind of think through that a little bit. I mean, again, as you all are exploring, first we need to see like, how long is it taking with kids? Like, like to kind of know what is realistic. But yeah, these are the very things that we are trying to figure out right now as a team. So like one thing we've already talked about, and whether you use our units or not, when we build out a calendar, like our units go 1 major reading, 1 major writing, and then we have those mini units that are kind of optional. Well, maybe we set the mini units aside and we build in time in the reading unit and the writing unit, because we don't want to separate vocabulary, but to add in more days there, because all of our reading AKS are covered outside of those mini units. So this is what this group is gonna kind of puzzle through together. Because I don't know, like I don't teach any kids right now, and neither does Hannah, and neither does Daryl. So we gotta kind of see what's realistic for you all in your classrooms.
Is there a progression, and this is for Jane and Ellen, if she can ever join us again. Is there a progression from unit 1 to unit 15, or is it just kind of like 6th grade words, 7th grade words, 8th grade words? Does that make sense?
There is a progression. They're all on grade level.
But I mean, within a grade level, is it easier? Is it like beginning of year words, middle of year words, end of year words, that kind of thing? Or is it just grade level?
I'm thinking maybe that's
It
where
was like unit 9 harder than unit 2.
Exactly, Carla.
Oh, okay.
My answer is
go ahead, Jane.
They're just they're words for that grade level, because some people could skip around and say, which I'm sure you need to start from the beginning, but like if you're studying this particular concept, like in science or social studies,
see that,
well, let's do this, so.
And that thematic or content related, that's what I'm thinking about for reading passages and things like that, to really supplement what the kids are doing in other classes or even our own.
Correct. But that would have to be a unified within your school or your grade.
Oh, sure.
The grade.
Trust me. We don't do anything that's not.
One thing, if I could make a suggestion, is because we do have such very different setups from school to school and class periods, when we're getting our recommendation from the county level, the more flexible that can be, instead of, the expectation is, and you may see a vocabulary word on the interim that came from unit 2, so you had better make sure you did unit 2. That I think will very quickly turn people off to the program if it becomes that prescriptive from the county level, as opposed to, recommended pacing, these things are organized unit 3, and then you get a cumulative kind of thing. You know what, every 9 weeks, aim to get through one of those little chunks. So 1, 2, and 3, and then 4, 5, and 6, and 7, 8, and 9. You can pick whichever set of 3 you want to do, but kind of as a general goal, here's where you're headed, and let people kind of work out the nuts and bolts at their local school.
I will
and
say
they're going to need to. I mean, Carla, that will have to happen because one, I can promise you there's no one on my team that has any desire to get that granular with it. But also because all of your teams plan so differently. And it would be flexible. Like we would probably just say, here's a recommendation. that, your goal should be to get through X number of units, in this period.
But because there is no progression, they're just words, we could skip around based on what we see as necessary.
I would think so. Well, Jane, what do you think?
Well, you need to make sure that you finish the unit, the entire
Right.
unit, those 20
Yes.
words.
To get
Right.
the
If
most
you
out of
move
it.
around some, that's
Okay.
key.
Yeah.
And other than that, then it just gives you some wiggle room,
Yeah.
because you're the experts. You know what you need. And to me, that's the beauty of this.
And you know
program.
your students.
Yeah,
Right.
you know your students, you know your stuff, so you got it.
These are all the things we get to figure out together.
Yes, but it's exciting to be able to do that, though, to have the
Yeah.
flexibility.
Yeah.
But yet, you've got the explicit instruction with a great reading comprehension built within.
Mhm.
Well, and
Like Charlie said, there's a lot of reading.
which is so good.
Yeah.
I appreciate the responsiveness of y'all, Jane and Ellen, because I know you're dealing with many school systems and many aspects of even just GCPS, but we so often have these platforms and these tools that are just immovable, and sometimes we stop using them because they're just not accessible or effective. And so knowing that there are limitations and timetables, but it's just great to even be having a conversation like this with y'all.
Oh, that blesses me, because your success is our success. I mean, I feel very determined that y'all are successful. And that's, I know Kimberly and Kim and David have worked so hard to get this going. So that's what we do.
I will say it's a lot easier from my perspective, because it's just, I mean, so you all probably don't know this, but Charlie emailed me last week and he's like, hey, I'm noticing this, I'm noticing that. So I emailed Jane and Ellen, and then they, connected with Charlie. Like, it is that one, kind of just in time, but two, that, oh, is there something we need to be aware of to make this better? And look, you all know this, that sometimes there are things on their end, but that they can do, but sometimes there are things on our end, not that either need to be changed, or because we often, as a district, use this, well, not often, we do it all the time. Whatever the technology specs are that are applied to one resource, they turn around and turn on the same things, the same features for any resource. So it is helpful to talk about it, because there have been a couple things where we've been able to go to, when they're talking David Diller. He is the king of all things technology and resources.
He's so humble. I love it.
Yeah, he is. But we're able to say, like, hey, this is not working. Like, this is not working out. We need to turn on a different button in Gwinnett, or so it's just good. But like I said, I am excited about this, even if this were not in direct response to COVID and learning loss. Yeah, we needed to do this before the pandemic. I mean, we really did.
Well, I'm glad that we not finally, but vocally and clearly have support. And it's like, because so often I think we each have conversations with different people we work with or work for. And it's like, you sometimes have to convince people of the value of something like this when they're on the outside looking in. And it's just so nice to have kind of the stamp of approval from above.
Yeah, it's more than the stamps. I can tell you, in elementary, like in K-5, it would be unfathomable to not dedicate time to word study. I mean, you would simply not do that. And we in middle and high, I think, have much to learn about the value in that. And like I said, we drifted from, like, we've always known. I mean, we've always known that this was important. And, this puts us in a better space, because when we've been saying we need to emphasize vocabulary in the past, well, that turned into look up these 10 words. And
Yes. Ooh.
And this prevents that.
Yeah, this does
Exactly.
prevent that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And your parents of the parents of the students are going to be so excited. You're going to see that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a really, really positive thing to happen, but we have things we've got to figure out, like adding this into our pacing. It's going to be clunky.
Well, we're here to help you any way that we can, even with that. So, if I know Ellen, if she's seen things work across the country that could help you,
Oh, yeah.
then she will, for sure.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, I'm gonna.
Y'all are awesome. I'm telling you.
Okay, Charlie.
Hey, y'all see this? This is mine from when I was in high school.
Wow.
Did I say antique?
It is.
an
I mean,
antique.
look at this, man.
Look at you. I love it. I love it. You're the best. Thank
So
you
that's
so
my
much.
concern, Charlie, is people are going to think, well, I used this in the 90s. Like, how could it possibly be good?
Well,
The
Tried
research
and
is the
true.
research.
yes, that's what I was
Yeah,
saying.
tried and
First of
true.
all,
Yeah.
some fundamental things never change.
Right.
And then
Exactly.
there are improvements and enhancements, obviously, through this platform.
Exactly. Well,
Right.
like the interactive edition, like you have. I mean, that's
Yes.
truly an enhancement.
Yeah. But no matter what, I mean, look, Marzano's work built upon Beck's work. Like, it's
Yeah.
all part of the same. Nobody is recommending completely different vocabulary approaches. So yes, but I'm glad you have your antique to share with us.
Yeah, man.
It's priceless.
Well, sorry to keep going on, y'all.
No,
It was
you're
nice to see
fine.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good to see all of you too. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Thank
All right,
you.
bye, y'all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Blessings. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.